wind and the wave and the deafening scream of the storm. Many iron bolts rolled in the crashing gale far off of the Michigan shore. Oh, the weary men held fast to the rail through the worst storm ever seen. Many ships were lost by the hurricane winds in the gale of 1913.
The Great Storm began Friday, November 9th on Lake Superior. By Sunday, Black Sunday, it engulfed all the Great Lakes, save Ontario, which somehow missed the death and destruction of the King of Storms. Storm flags had been hoisted, but few ships paid any attention to them. Steel freighters had been on the lakes for over 3 decades, and they seemed virtually unsinkable. No one at the launching of the 550-foot freighter Carruthers could imagine that wind would do her in. Mother Nature was about to prove everyone wrong.
This is where it first became apparent that, indeed, a tragedy had occurred on the Great Lakes. From the Port Huron Light-Saving Station, something was spotted out on the lake. They dispatched the tug Sparta, and 7 miles out, they found the overturned hull of a mystery ship.
Lake Huron had taken the brunt of the storm, and the photographs of the overturned hull quickly became a symbol of Mother Nature's fury on the lakes. But the mystery ship was only the beginning of a week's worth of bad news. On Lake Michigan, 2 ships had run aground on Washington Island, near the tip of the Door Peninsula. The Louisiana caught fire and burned, and the Halstead was thrown onto the rocks nearby. All crew members escaped without injury. But that wasn't the case just 12 miles north of the island. The tug James Martin was slowly sinking, trying to pull the barge Plymouth through 30-foot waves. The captain of the Martin signaled the Plymouth to drop anchor, and the tow line was severed. The crew of the Martin made it to safety. The Plymouth disappeared with 7 souls.
Tethered to an anchor down, the Plymouth rode the storm. Abandoned near Gull Island, 7 souls remained aboard. 40 hours she was raked by gale and towering wave. A once proud craft no longer sails, but now remains a grave. Tethered to an anchor down, the Plymouth.
Coming up, the mystery of the mystery ship is solved, and the story of wheelsman Ed Kanabe, who disobeyed orders and saved his shipmates.
Oh, what a blizzard.
Red and black storm flags apparently meant nothing to Captain James Owens of the steamer Henry B. Smith. Frozen rail cars at Marquette's ore docks had already delayed his departure, and he was bound and determined to get out of Marquette even before his hatches were all secured. His haste only allowed him an hour in the storm. The Smith and all her crew disappeared only a few miles from port. Superior's fury also took the steamer Leafield and her crew near Port William. 9 other ships were beached and severely damaged, including the William Nottingham. 3 men died trying to get help on shore near Whitefish Bay. Meanwhile, marine experts were feuding over the identity of the mystery ship and how a steel freighter could somehow turn turtle. Diver William Baker finally unlocked the secret when he descended beneath the waves and clearly read Charles S. Price. That ship was last seen north of Sand Beach by the steamship H.B. Hawgood. In the pilot house was wheelsman Ed Kanabe.
I looked up ahead. Here comes a boat. Oh, that crazy man. Coming out into a storm like this, about a 90-mile gale. How much stronger, I don't know.
Kanabe and the captain of the Hawgood were the last people to see several of the vessels lost on Lake Huron. Sunday morning, they spotted a small package freighter barely making it through the wave.
He said, "That's the Regina, a Canadian ship." I said, "Looks like we're going to have company." So the wind was quite strong. And every few minutes, there'd be a gust of wind come up, stronger than the one before.
Kanabe was right. The gale increased to 60 miles an hour and held steady for over 16 hours straight. It was too much for the Regina, a ship that was built strong enough to withstand the fury of the open ocean.
I looked to the east, and I didn't see that little boat anymore. It must have tipped over and sank.
The H.B. Hawgood sailed on, meeting the Isaac Scott around 3:30 Sunday afternoon. It wasn't long after the Scott flipped and sank with a load of coal and 28 lives.
We got by the Isaac Scott, and the captain called down, and he said, "We gotta turn around and go in deeper waters." That scared me. I thought to myself, oh no, you don't. Not as long as I'm a wheelsman. And I gave her a port wheel. And I threw the ship out of control.
Not while I'm the wheelman will the Hawgood seek deep water. The sirens of Lake Huron wish to taste another crew. Our plates are bent by gouging waves as we face the cruel nor'easter. I'll beach her at Port Edward, and that's all that I will do.
The Hawgood made it to the far end of Lake Huron before grounding near Port Edward. Kanabe had saved the crew from certain death and even went on to make 2 more runs that year before the lakes froze up. Wreckage and bodies confirmed the disaster that Kanabe knew had happened. 8 ships had sunk on Lake Huron with all hands. Incredibly, even the 6-month-old James Carruthers was lost, the largest freighter on the Great Lakes. Joining the Carruthers on the bottom, the Hydrus, Argus, Regina, Wexford, John McGeehan, and Isaac M. Scott. The mystery ship, Charles S. Price, finally settled to the bottom November 17th, and Lake Erie added 6 more to the death toll when light ship number 82 disappeared near Buffalo.
No one lived to explain exactly why these ships flipped over and sank, but there were 3 messages that offered some good clues. Captain Hugh Williams of Lightship 82 sent a message to his wife. "Goodbye, Nellie, ship breaking up fast." And 2 messages were found inside bottles. One, allegedly from the doomed freighter H.B. Smith, was eventually considered a cruel hoax. But another bottled goodbye from the barge Plymouth was all too real. U.S. Marshal Chris Keenan had another crewman help him write a goodbye to his family. He said the tug Martin left without ever saying goodbye, and that they had lost a man while battling the storm for 40 hours. He felt his end was near and asked his family to pray for him and to collect $35 that the shipping company still owed him.
Still to come, a Saginaw man remembers his trip through the King of Storms when he was just 11 years old.
The waves were anywhere from 35 to 40 feet high, the worst they had ever been.
And we'll visit several of the sunken ships and see what they look like today. Bodies and wreckage continue to wash ashore all along Lake Huron's east coast, but not all the news in Goderich was bad.
Here at the Goderich branch of the Huron Library, they keep the Signal, the newspaper of that era. And in the article published right after the storm, Awful Marine Disaster on the Great Lakes, there's a mention of how the Turret Cape safely made port. And aboard the Turret Cape was Saginaw resident Ted Bullard.
I can't recall, as of the moment, the day that we were able to pull into Goderich Harbor, but when we pulled in there, the town band was down there. I would say that most of the citizens of the town were there cheering and waving us in.
Bullard's best friend Tom was the son of Captain Patrick McCarthy, skipper of the Turret Cape. Ted and Tom were 11 years old when they rode out the King of Storms on both Lake Superior and Huron.
Obviously, when we got in the neighborhood of Goderich, Ontario, there was no possibility of getting in there. At that time, the waves were anywhere from 35 to 40 feet high, the worst they had ever been. And the wind was up to 70, 80, and 90 miles an hour in spasms.
The tour at Cape spent 2 days trying to make port in Goderich. The steamer Wexford, also trying to get in, never made it. Her distress signals were heard until she plunged to the bottom with her crew aboard.
Well, I just have to say that we were the luckiest people in the world. And again, the type of ship that we were on was the answer to our being saved.
The bodies of many of the victims of the storm of 1913 washed ashore in Huron County, Ontario, in the town of Goderich. And on the outskirts of town here in Maitland Cemetery can be found a memorial where they're remembered today. Next, Rick Mixter will visit 3 of the known wrecks, and we'll find out if a future storm could ever claim as many lives.
There are 2 markers that commemorate the Great Storm of 1913. This one here in Goderich, Ontario, and another near Lexington, Michigan. But perhaps the greatest tribute to the storm is the ships themselves. But in order to visit these artifacts, you're going to have to get wet.
A shadow passes over here, a freighter sails above. But the Price won't pipe a greeting, she can never make a sound. Resting on Lake Huron's floor, she cannot sail again. And only divers visit her, and all her missing men.
The Charles S. Price was the first of the freighters to be located. Divers spent a full summer trying to salvage the ship in 1916, but it was determined that little remained worth saving. So the ship was released back to the bottom of Lake Huron. Upside down in some 60 feet of water, the Price is quickly deteriorating, and extreme caution is advised if you plan on venturing inside. There's nothing to see anyways. Its coal cargo spilled out before she sank, and there's not much to see beyond her huge propeller. Artifacts from the Price, including parts of her cargo, are on display at Port Huron's museum. Also in the collection is the letter S from the Charles S. Price, her middle initial. All of the lettering that once titled her name is missing, so the Charles S. Price is once again the mystery ship. Four other freighters took a half-century to find. In 1971, the Isaac M. Scott was located by Kent Bellrichard in 200 feet of water off Thunder Bay Island near Alpena. A year later, the Argus was found by Dick Race in 225 feet of water, 13 miles off Michigan's Thumb. In 1985, the John McGeehan was discovered in 175 feet of water, 10 miles off Port Hope by wreck hunter David Trotter. All of the freighters were found upside down in deep water, far below recommended sport diver limits. Luckily, it wasn't long before Lake Huron gave up another ship, and this one was in 80 feet of water.
That's what a shipwreck looks like, the Regina coming up on the graph.
The Charles S. Price will always be remembered as the mystery ship, but the Regina had quite an enigma too. In fact, many so-called marine experts thought the mystery ship off Port Huron was the Regina, except for her owners, who said the black hull was much too big and the wrong color. Headlines even claimed another ship was foundered beneath the Regina. But no news story caused more of a stir than when the body of the chief engineer of the Price, John Groundwater, was found wearing a Regina lifebelt. Most believe that the two ships had collided, and in the confusion, lifebelts were donned by anyone who could grab them. But diver William Baker, who discovered the mystery ship was the Price, saw no evidence of collision, and most of the Regina's bodies came ashore frozen stiff in lifeboats. A better explanation of the lifebelt mix-up was that people were robbing bodies for collectibles, and when police started investigating, someone returned the belt to the wrong body. The collision theory was completely disproven when a team of divers found the Regina 73 years later.
We were looking for a tugboat that was supposed to be in the area, and it was completely by accident we ended up on this one, although not such by accident. Some of the old fishermen had been hitting into this thing quite regularly, and I think it was thanks to one of them that actually put us right within the area. I felt that we could get within a quarter mile of it. We hit it the first pass the first day, so. This one was special, though. I mean, to find something that I felt actually changed history, I was always thought this one collided with the Price and never did, so I guess that's kind of what I really feel the most satisfied about.
Found upside down and just a few miles from shore, the Regina has since become the star attraction of the Sanilac Underwater Preserve.
Proud Regina upside down, cannot see the sky. For 7 decades she was lost, with all her goods inside. Now only divers run their hands along her rusting name, and fish glide her companion ways where men won't walk again. Proud Regina upside down, cannot see the sky.
Much of the ship was salvaged and sold as artifacts by Freedom Marine, but now it's protected by federal law, with strict penalties for any diver who steals items from the wreck. Diving inside the Regina should only be attempted by experienced divers. It's a dangerous adventure for divers who crawl into the cargo hold and into the engine room.
Wreck diving is a specialized form of diving, and you should have the proper training and equipment to do it. A line reel is a must for things like this. Training-wise, you do get silt outs. A lot of people panic during it. Silt out just is what it says. All of a sudden your visibility goes down to nothing. And usually if you can just wait a few moments, your visibility will come back. Or again, as long as you've got a line reel on you, and every person should have a line reel, you can follow the line reel back out to where you can see again.
There's still plenty to see even if you don't go inside the wreck. The debris field changes with shifting sands, unveiling new artifacts nearly every time you dive. Again, it's a felony to remove items from the wreck without a permit. Lake Huron's collection of 1913 ships is unmatched by any other of the Great Lakes, but a close second might be an area that the Indians called Death's Door, on a large island off the tip of Wisconsin's Door Peninsula. It was here on Washington Island that the Louisiana grounded and caught fire, and nearby the Halstead was beached. Both crews made it safely to shore, but only after a long 5-mile walk through the snow to the nearest farmhouse. The Halstead was fixed and released, but the Louisiana was a total loss. Today, only the hull remains. This is an extremely shallow wreck, under 10 feet in most areas, but that allows divers to spend up to an hour looking around, and there's still quite a bit to see. Fish are everywhere, and the wreck still contains engine parts and other machinery. A survey was made of the wreck only a few years ago, but yet another storm has damaged the Louisiana further. Her bow now rests above water, on the beach about 100 yards from the wreck. Washington Island is also home to a large rudder, which some believe to be from the barge Plymouth, lost only 12 miles north of Washington Island. But no evidence has ever surfaced from the wreck to prove she was the Plymouth, and the location of the remains, only a few yards from the Poverty Island lighthouse, should have been seen by the keeper who used to live on the island full-time. Some believe the wreck is out in the middle of the lake, explaining the fact that the body of Chris Keenan was found just miles from Manistee, near where his bottle washed ashore. The captain of the Plymouth was found a month later near Muskegon. 5 others were never found. There are 2 other wrecks within sport diving limits that were involved in the Great Storm. The shallow wreck of the barge Salver is near the harbor breakwall in Muskegon. In 1913, the Salver was the Turret Chief. She was grounded at the tip of the Keweenaw Peninsula and considered a total loss. A shipwreck in the Thumb Area Preserve was also beached during the Great Storm. The A.E. Stewart was aground with several others near Whitefish Bay. Today her remains carry the name Glenarchy, sunk in a collision in 1924.
The rumor is that the Wexford was found in 1975 off Kettle Point, but newspaper articles say that the Salvers were to give up artifacts to the Goderich Museum. Nothing was ever donated there. The museum does have the life ring from the James Carruthers, which is used in a memorial service every year. And Lake Superior has yet to give up its 2 ships, the H.B. Smith near Marquette and also the Lee Field sunk near Fort William.
The devastation from the Great Storm has never totally been added up. To ports like Cleveland and Milwaukee, the devastation took millions of dollars to repair. The death toll was never determined. Ship rosters were incomplete. We do know a little over 240 sailors lost their lives battling the Great Storm of 1913.
Could yet another great storm devastate the lakes? Most Great Lakes ship captains don't think so. Technology has improved navigation and has also given the skippers weather information never before available. Ships haven't changed much over the years. In fact, the E.M. Ford predates nearly all the freighters lost in the Great Storm, and she's still delivering cement today. What has changed is the attitude of the captains and the owners. Cash bonuses for crews who bring in the most cargo are now outlawed, and the safety of the crew is now the #1 priority.
So you look at the elements and you get as much information that you possibly can from the Weather Bureau, from other ships, get all the faxes that you possibly can, then maybe attempt. And maybe you might turn around and come back. That's what happened to me at the Straits the other day. I thought it was less out there, and I took off from Rabbitback at St. Ignace, and we came out to Pole Reef visit, and I met the Welson out there, and he said, "Hey, there's 10-foot seas out here." It's hard right, and back to Rabbitback, and down went the, is at the port anchor. That's the way it goes.
Bigger storms are always possible, and the Great Lakes are notorious for reminding us that no ship, no matter how big, can take the worst that the Great Lakes has to dish out. But communications are improved, and so is weather forecasting, and it's unlikely that ever again 12 ships will vanish without a trace like they did that Black Sunday, 1913.
The deafening scream of the storm. Many iron boats rolled in the crashing gale far off of the Michigan shore. Oh, the weary men held fast to the rail through the worst storm ever seen. Many ships were lost by the hurricane winds in the gale of 1913. Near 40 ships, over 200 men sailed the lakes when the storm began. They fought the winds and the mountain waves, but never came home again. These good ships torn by the claws of the storm, and the white foam smothered the crew, and the wreckage washed on the shores of the lakes when the deadly gale was through. Hold her bow in the wind and the wave and the deafening scream of the storm. Many iron boats rolled in the crashing gale far off of the Michigan shore. Oh, the weary